The worst thing about Japan. I guess the worst thing about Japan. Not really sure. In some ways, I guess it's still a really cocooned country. As advanced as its technology and everything else is, I think maybe it could become a little bit more internationalized. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or bad thing, but just something off the top of my head that I decided to put out there.
Well, I would say, like I said earlier, I was talking about the convenience of Japan, and I think Japan is very convenient, and so things like walking to the grocery store, walking to 7-Eleven, walking to restaurants in the area, walking to the train station to get to bigger towns is very convenient, and I think compared to living in the States where I had to drive everywhere. You know, if I wanted to go to the grocery store, I had to drive. If I wanted to go to the bank or anything like that. Sure, there were a few restaurants near my apartment that I lived in when I was living in the city, but for the most part, I had to drive everywhere. And so the convenience of being able to just kind of get to places in Japan. Now, like I said earlier, if you live in a pretty rural area, if you're living out in a rice field, you're going to have to drive anyways. But I would say where I live, it's very convenient, and I don't live in a big city at all. So being able to get to things in Japan is pretty great. Also, I love the culture in Japan. There's festivals every weekend in the summertime. There's always some event going on. And I feel like in Japan I'm more invested and more not willing to go. I mean, I guess that's what I'm going for here. I'm more interested in going to a cultural festival here in Japan than, say, in the States. I feel like I live in Japan, so I should be taking in as much of Japan as I can. You know, I lived in America for a long time, and so I'm in Japan, so I'm going to experience, the cultural things of Japan as much as possible. So, yeah, I think those are the best things about Japan. Just being involved with your community and being involved with the local things. I think that's pretty cool. What is the worst thing about Japan in your opinion? So I purposefully didn't really read these questions beforehand because I kind of wanted to get my honest opinions and reactions to them as I went through them. And I saw this one pretty early on, actually, the worst things about Japan. And I feel like I'm one of those foreigners that doesn't complain about Japan. There are problems in Japan. There are issues in Japan. Japan is not a perfect country by any stretch of the imagination. A lot of people like to think that Japan is problem-free, and there are issues and there are things. Honestly, those things don't bother me, and they probably should. Like, I feel like saying that makes me a bad person, that I kind of ignore certain things that don't affect me. But I guess if we're honest, if we're all honest, we kind of tend to not care about things that don't affect us personally. Yeah, I feel bad saying that because I know that there's issues and I know that there's things that I should care about. And honestly, I don't. And so I don't know. I don't know what the result of that is. I don't know what that makes me as a person, and I don't know what that makes me as a citizen living in Japan, that I don't care about certain things and care about certain issues. I mean, I do care about certain things. It's just that when it comes to Japan, like I said earlier, I don't really talk about political things, and I don't really read about political things. And there's a lot of political things that happen in Japan, like any country. And I just feel bad saying I don't care. The worst things about Japan, things that are inconvenient, things that inconvenience me on a daily basis, I guess that would be the worst things about Japan. I feel really terrible. I still feel really terrible saying that, like, things don't bother me. I'm just the type of person that I don't get all worked up and angry over things. There's certain things that you can change and certain things that you can't change in your life and in life around you. And the things that I can't change, or the things that I don't have any ability to impact, I don't let bother me. Again, that sounds really terrible, I guess. I don't know. I feel like I should be protesting something. But that's just not me. That's just not who I am. Sorry. The worst thing about Japan, I'll stick with the comical answers because, like, that's what works for me, I guess. Fax machines. You still gotta use fax machines in Japan for some reason. They've not switched over to the idea of email. I mean, obviously people use email, but everything has to be faxed. Everything has to be filled out like multiple times in multiple forms. Ironically, though, going to places like immigration is strangely efficient and relatively painless. You know, depending on your visa status, you'll have to go to immigration once a year, or every 3 years, or every 5 years, whatever the case may be. Yeah, I've always had a relatively painless experience, and it seems like it's only gotten better over the past few years. I remember having to wait in immigration for hours, whereas when I've gone previous years, like last year, like this year, it just was very easy and in and out process. And so, yeah, I don't know. I guess that's the worst thing about Japan. I guess that's not too bad then.
I'll give you the bad ones first. Worst things. Number 1, no cheap pizza. Number 2 is housing. That always comes up. The houses here are not built to the standards that you're probably used to if you're coming here from the U.S. Insulation, no such thing. Double paned windows, you'll never find them. Central heat and air, what's that? So I'm not very fond of the housing here. And some of the best things about it are, number 1, the exoticism. Just the simple fact that if you have it in you that you love adventure, you love something new. When it comes to Asia, I've read something in an article somewhere that said that the nation that is the most like the United States technologically, but the least like the United States culturally, is Japan. And I would say that that's probably true in my experience. I've also been many, many other places in the United States and all over the world. But I agree. This is a place where you will be inundated with a lot of exoticism compared to what it is that you're used to. And if that's your thing, and if you're looking at Japan, it probably is, then you will not be disappointed. This place will give it to you. And also just the personability would be my number 2 on the best things about Japan. I've met a lot of really great people here who are really enthusiastic about you, about meeting you, getting to know you, and sharing what it is that they have and what's around them. That goes back to my opinions about becoming successful. Is if you networking anywhere is vital to making success. Networking here in Japan, personal in-face networking will pay off, because that's how it's done here. This is a very personable country. It's very high tech, and yet at the same time, you're going to see that people love to get together in person. They still like to buy stuff like DVDs here, whereas they're kind of obsolete back in the U.S. because they like that. They like to see and touch and collect things in person. They also, it's a cash country too. With debit cards, credit cards are practically never used. They're not even accepted in most places over here. So anywhere where cash is still king, collector's items are extremely valuable and extremely normal, and going out in person for interpersonal communication and contact, that's one of the things that I love most about it here.
What, in your opinion, is the best and worst thing about Japan? Let us know your thoughts and comments by visiting JQNA on Facebook at facebook.com/JQNA podcast. Also, be sure to check out the show notes for this episode by visiting kiritesjapan.com/JQNA. In the next episode of JQNA, we're talking about experiences that surprised us. I'm excited to see what everyone has to say, and I hope you are too. Speaking of the next episode, because this week we merged 6 and 7, I'm taking a week off so I can stick to my original schedule. I hope this isn't too much of an inconvenience, but rest assured we'll be back the following week. Thank you once again for listening to JQNA. On behalf of myself and the cast, I hope you enjoyed the show, and we'll see you next time. If you love listening to podcasts like JQNA, then you'll love listening to audiobooks on audible.com. For you, the listeners of JQNA, Audible is offering a free audiobook download with free 30-day trial to give you the opportunity to check out their service. This week's recommendation is Tokyo Vice, an American reporter on the police beat in Japan by Jake Adelstein. To download your free audiobook today, go to audibletrial.com/JQNA. Again, that's audibletrial.com/JQNA for your free audiobook.